So, G, you're in the business of making winning repeatable.
Yeah.
How do you do that?
I'd say most of my job is pattern matching. It's about understanding the conditions a company, a startup is in. What's their market? What have
Mhm.
they already tried? What have they maybe not tried? Where are the opportunities? Um, and if you look at I'm a marketer, so if you look at marketing teams, the couple of pillars are like understanding what's happening. Okay, so are you able to understand how your business is doing? Okay, then
Mhm.
knowing where are the opportunities versus what's happening. Like, what is best in class? Do you have the experience for that or not? All right, and then when there's a gap, knowing what can I try? What are the experiments that are likely to be successful? And that's where pattern matching happens. When I see that you have maybe a 15% activation rate, all right, uh, a couple of ideas pop in my head immediately. Do we have the right audience coming to the site? Are we priming them for the right experience, right? And are we creating the right incentives? And I already have ideas of experiments in my head, like, oh, I've tried this before. I tried this at Segment. I tried this at Drift. I tried that at Gorgeous. Like, which one is the closest? Which one is the most likely to succeed? And so that's what I do. And so when I see a new business that comes to me and asks for advisory, I'm thinking, is it likely that I'll be able to like use many tricks from my big bag of tricks?
Hmm. So when you, let's say you're working on a company that is competing in a saturated market or category,
Yeah,
most companies are these days in
absolutely.
B2B. Uh, so where do you start? Are you looking at what the competitors are doing? Are you starting with who are the customers and what do they want? What's your starting point?
Yeah. Um, so I have a new client recently in fintech, right? Expense management and corporate credit cards. Pretty saturated, man. Like those things have been
Yeah.
around forever, right? And so I'm looking at what do we have right now? We have pretty good volume. We have pretty good traction. Most of it is organic, right? They have not tested many non-organic channels. Okay, that's one opportunity. Should we focus on that or not? That's the first question. Two, what are the conversion rates? Conversion rates are average. They actually, and that's the first mistake most people do. Like they look at the average and say, well, it's pretty okay. I look at the distribution. You got to cut your audience in multiple buckets and understand, like, well, some of it converts really well, and some of it converts really poorly, right? That's kind of always the case. Is it because we are bringing the wrong people to our product, right? Or because we're pushing the wrong promise? And it's often a bit of both, right? And so I'm going to start understanding the audience. I'm going to start testing hypothesis of if I change something, does it produce the expected lift? I'm going to give you an example that I do like almost all the time. Almost all, say, fairly mid-stage, late-stage companies have good acquisition strategies. They're going to have like paid with like very granular campaigns and landing pages. Maybe they're using like Wynter to test like the copy on the landing page, whatnot. We all of those. They do all those things, and they get leads. And then what happens? All of that very granular insight and experience gets mashed up into one onboarding, into one product, and one welcome email chain, right? And so it's kind of like a funnel of information where there's compression, right? Which is really weird because we felt that we had to personalize and to cater the message to them at the top of the funnel to get them to be interested. And then we say, hey, now that you're in, like, we no longer care about why you came in. Like, this is the product. And I said, this is wrong. This is absolutely wrong. If you understand that you have multiple different audiences, you got to keep that differentiation towards the very end. I'm French and I live at the border of France and Italy right now. So, like, I like to speak of like a good parallel is Italian dishes, right? You got to think of like the cannelloni versus the lasagna, right? Most teams organize like cannellonis, right? They actually have like isolated teams, and like somebody does like paid ads and does a granular job, and then the other person is like another silo. And say, cool, like I just have a product, and I'm going to do the best onboarding for everyone. Right? You got to think in terms of lasagna, which is like from end to end, Like you got to preserve what made that person tick. If somebody came for, I don't know, expense management for free, which might be like a reason, right? If you have that product, well, and if you push them eventually into like a page or a product that says, hey, like pick your plan, and there's only paid plans, right? It's like obviously that's not going to work well, right? And so you got to preserve the information. If you have expense management for a large enterprise, put them into something which respects what you know about them. So it's really about coherence end to end. And that's what we miss most of the time in organizations. We miss the end to end coherence.
So it sounds like your starting point is then the company itself. What are they doing or not doing, and where are they currently underperforming? And then that is a way to optimize the
Yeah.
machine.
Yeah.
Um,
I've got a three-step approach. I try to like understand what's going on, as you said.
mhm.
Two, I will pattern match myself and push them to test a couple of things which I know have been wins elsewhere to gain confidence that they can actually execute and that the truth that I have, the knowledge I have from elsewhere actually applies here. And third, which may be the most important, is training them on how to find new ideas and how to experiment on their own. And that's very important, right? Because like sure, I have a pretty large bag of tricks, but eventually I'm going to run out, right? And that's not a long-term competitive moat. The moat is from helping, it's giving them the win so they get excited. Then they have this this need for more, right? It's kind of the same concept as like the gateway drug. You have the gateway drug to like hypergrowth, right? And eventually you want more, and so then you need to spin up your growth team, right? With an experimentation framework, which I provide, and it helps them find those new ideas, evaluate, sort, and pick, and then test the ideas, okay, at a very high pace, because that's
Mhm.
how they're going to win over and over multiple years.
What about competing on product? In your approach, are you like, oh, well, you're mostly like the other products, or at least not worse, so let's focus on marketing? Or are you also, hey, you guys, you have a Me Too product or inferior product, maybe? How much product innovation?
Yeah, it doesn't
How
matter,
much does
man.
it matter?
It doesn't matter. Um, I'm a marketer, so my job is not to do the product. Most companies that succeed through the product because they have a great product, and the marketing is just like kind of supporting the product, right? Not doing a great job. You got to respect the marketers who are able to push an inferior product and succeed. Okay, those are the good marketers, right? When you're hiring marketers, don't do the mistake of hiring people who are at a very successful brand and who were successful by default, right? Because then the product is great, all right? Do the opposite, like companies that are successful with a crappy product, or if not crappy, at least like a Me Too product, like an average product.
Mhm.
I'll give you a harsh, brutal example that I lived in. I worked at Drift. Look at Drift in the early days. Drift is a live chat competing with Intercom and 20, maybe 100 other live chat products, most of
Right.
which were free. So that's, if you want to look for a saturated market, that's one. Like
Mhm.
saturated with free products. Is or was Drift in 2016, 2017 a much better product than all the others? I'd argue not so. Right? It was a good product, but not very differentiated. All right. Did Drift succeed on the marketing side at creating a nice wedge in the market? Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's a good example, right? Of like
Mhm.
winning through marketing and not through product.
Yeah. So in Drift's case, let's say the feature set was a commodity. Oh, you can do live chat and bots and then send some emails.
Yeah.
But then, in terms of their brand and messaging, they did not talk about the like, oh, conversational sales, conversational marketing, revenue acceleration, all those things. So that's competing on story, competing on brand. How important is that?
Um, when you have a meet your product, very important, obviously. But I think in that case, more specifically, it was about understanding that there was no winning the legacy market. Right?
Hmm.
Drift was in a legacy market where live chat has been around for 20 more years, and it was already labeled by Gartner and Forrester and all of the analysts as, this is how live chat are supposed to work, and this is all the features. And if you enter a feature war, you're never going to win, All right, it's a terrible thing to do. And so it's about saying, hey, we're going to create our own market, our own category. We're going to rename it. We're not a live chat. We're conversational marketing, right? And you can say, no, that's just like some marketing BS. Maybe, but it works. It works in the sense that it's now a category that Rich was able to define the controls and the features of that category and be listed as a leader in that category. That absolutely works.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
So how often do you go into let's say a client's business and say, "Hey, you guys should consider creating a new category"?
Yeah. Oh, don't worry. Everybody wants that. So the clients already know that. They know they want that. The question is it possible? All right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not always possible. All right. Like if you look at the companies that have been able to do it, there are a few of them. Everyone wants to be the leader of their own
Right.
category.
So Gainsight said it requires millions of dollars. Do you agree?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look at Drift. It's more than millions of dollars. Like, look at all the events and conferences, all the sponsoring, all the podcasts and content, all the people working on it. It's tens of millions. Absolutely. But if the market can support it and it's worth it for you, then it's worth it, yeah.
So what do you do if let's say you're early or you're not well funded, it's a mature category, your product is okay but it's not revolutionary, don't have the money to do category creation.
Yeah.
Then what strategy would you bank on?
Yeah.
Or where would you start then?
You got to find some angle of differentiation. Like obviously, right? Because you got to give your marketer like something. Okay, let's take another example. Look at Gorgias. Okay, Gorgias, former client of mine, a help desk for e-commerce stores. Pretty successful. All right, help desk. Man, there's like help desks like everywhere. Like everybody's a help desk, right? Now, and there's a leader, Zendesk, public company, huge one. All right, very successful. Now, they understood that they could carve out within the entire market a smaller niche, which is e-commerce. And there were not many players in that category. Okay, now there's no such category such as like help desk for e-commerce, at least yet. And they don't have the means to create the category yet. But it is a market, it is a niche, all right, with underserved needs. So they built feature sets, namely integrations with Shopify, with all the e-commerce platforms. And the marketing side, we started outreaching hard on the populations that did not have anything, that were basically managing all the tickets in Gmail, and the population that has Zendesk, which was basically underserving them by not having any integration with the e-commerce tool stack. And the win rates were above 50%. And that's when you understand that you have something there. And it's not so much, at least at the beginning, having a very differentiated, like awesome product. It's about having the right angle. It's saying, hey, Pete, you have an e-commerce store. It's very successful. And where you make money, we understand that where you make money is with repeat customers. It's not with new customers. In e-commerce, margin on new customers is very low. So repeat customers. And the only way to bring repeat customers is to offer a great experience, Amazon style. How are you going to do that if you take like 48, 72 hours to respond? Right? And just by having a messaging that is very acutely on the e-commerce situation, we're able to create that connection and win. And then once you start having that momentum, then you create more features, and then you start winning there, right? And Gorgias is now like Series B, raised a ton of money, very successful, 130 people.
Mm-hmm. So identifying an underserved market, looking at how to carve out an opportunity there, and then doubling down on that messaging.
And I think that there's something we're forgetting here, which is my general approach to B2B SaaS is in identifying, mapping the entire market first. Okay, most people will have what I call a passive approach. They create a product, then they create some outbound and inbound, like mix of channels, like some ads, some content, and some outbound, whatnot, everything. And they wait for the leads to trickle in. And then they try to like qualify them, see like who wants a demo, and close a bit. And basically, they try to do more of the same every month, all right, and just change the conversion rates. And I'm like, that's cool, but like we don't know if we're targeting the right people by doing that. Like, what is the total market revenue? So what I try to do is I take the slides from the investor pitch of like, the total market and say, cool, let's identify every single company here. And within each company, let's identify every single buyer. So if you think of ABM, that's like ABM at like mass scale. Like, and then say, well, now let's see who are we able to engage through which channel and which companies are likely to close now. What's the right channel? What's the right investment? What's the right message? And who should we reach out now? Because most of the people we should not reach out to now. And we are now closer to being like farmers who are optimizing the total revenue of a total market. That's what I did at Drift. That's also what I did at Segment. That's also what I did at Gorgeous recently. We mapped all of the e-commerce stores in the US that had over $1 million worth of transactions per year. Right? There's 100K-ish of them. Right? That's not that big. Right? And so we could say, hey, in the old approach, we had identified like 30,000 of them, and we were hammering those 30,000 stores like every month with emails and whatnot. But there was 70% of the market that we were just ignoring because we just didn't know about them. By mapping the entire market, we're able to be a lot more strategic about why are we not talking to those people? Like, why are they not coming to our content? Why are we not like engaging with them? And what can we do to change that? Okay.
So once you have that list, 100,000 or whatever, how will you then decide how to engage them? Like, when will you, oh, let's run some, I don't know, ads that they might see versus outreach on LinkedIn or, cold sales?
Yeah.
How do you determine it?
Yeah. We start doing some tests and see like, we bucket the populations in like either some personas or some like we have some leads going with my friends like Matt Good, like different ways, right? And we try to like identify and test different approaches for each bucket. So you could say, hey, like it's a simple way. Let's just cut it by like company size. That's how most people do it, right? And so you can say, well, maybe the larger companies, we can test them outbound, but it's unlikely to work, right? If you do some outbound to like VPs of CS at like large Shopify stores, like right? So you need something more personalized, a better approach. And so you test different approaches, right? So what do you have at hand? So there you need a marketer who knows all the possibilities and knows like what's likely to work at different levels of seniority and company size. So I know ads, unlikely to work, all right? Outbound email, unlikely to work. You need a personal touch. Cool. What's a personal connection? Well, in that specific case, we went through agencies. All those large stores work with agencies, and going through them, we're able to leverage the trust of the agency to get to the store. All right. So, biz dev channel. That's one example. But you need to be able to identify and be strategic, like what is the best mix of channels for each bucket.
Mm-hmm. Are there any, let's say, broad stroke rules that you go by that, if you're this, then that?
Yeah, absolutely. I try to avoid burning the market. And that's very important. Like I could blast an email to the entire market this day and like make the quarter and then like fail at every year in the future, right? And so you got to understand like what percentage am I converting? This is what percentage am I burning? Okay, and am I converting more than am I burning? And what's the refresh rate of the market? People who are changing jobs and getting promoted, whatnot. So you got to be like tactical about that. I'd say that's number one. And number two for me, to leverage the intent. If you have the entire market mapped, right? Well, you got to think within that market there's some part of it which is likely to convert better than the rest of the market at the same, I'd say, score or lead scoring, right? It's those that are expressing the need to change, whether they're doing willingly or not, right? So example, if they go to the G2 category and they view your competitors, and you can buy that data from my friends at G2. Well, they're expressing a buying intent if you get that information. And so those should bubble up to the top of the people who should get more, outreach from you, obviously. All right. If somebody signed a deal with your competitor 3 months ago, right, and it's an annual contract, because that's what you do in your industry, might not be worth sending them emails for the next 10 months, right? Because they're unlikely to churn at the beginning of the contract and go to you. Give them a pause. Right? Get back to them like a month or two before the contract renews. I did that at Drift all the time. Like Drift Intercom annual contracts. Like planning for when contracts would renew, reach out 2 months before renewal. In the meantime, don't put in unnecessary pressure.
Mhm. Yeah. Some of the intent data that I've seen is like fairly useless,
Hmm?
because there's so many intent data providers, and some is like, oh, interested in semiconductors, and then you're like, well, so what exactly
Yeah,
fit your
yeah, yeah. I
request?
hate, I hate that. I hate that kind of intent data. I'm not going to name the vendors, but I hate when I can't validate the intent data myself. So I'll give you two cases of intent data. There's intent data I can prove that it works. Okay, so example, my friends at Predict Leads sell intent data on hiring. So they basically scrape all the job boards. They do like natural language processing, and they identify, hey, like this company like is hiring a VP of customer success. I can look at 10 records, go to the jobs and teams page, and check that the job posting is there. I'm like, okay, like I understand how it works. I can verify it myself. I can get pretty good confidence, like this stuff is legit. And in my case, if they're hiring a VP of CS, like it's a good sign, right?
Hmm.
When I was at Drift, I was buying the data for like increasing sales team. I was looking like, hey, are they like doubling the size of the sales team? If they are, like they need more leads, they need a chatbot. Cool, all right? So that's the intent data you can validate. That's true for hiring data. It's true for G2. It's true for, and then there's like the intent data, which is like kind of black box. Right? It's like, hey, they tell you like, hey, there's like they're looking for those keywords. Like they're reading articles about that. There's no way I can validate that. Just like you could tell me anything that I want to hear, and like, how would I know? All right.
Hmm.
So that's I'm pretty cautious about.
You mentioned about a classic, let's say, competitive strategy mistake, which is like people are just waiting harder for the leads to come in, and as opposed to going after them proactively. What other classic mistakes are you seeing when it comes to competing in a saturated category?
Yeah, I think it's the lack of differentiation, right? And
Hmm.
also just talking about your product. Um, the many companies, when I look at the ad running, I look at the copy, I look at the ads, and it's just me. All right. And I'm like, if there's 20 companies like yours, like I'm not gonna feel the subtle difference. And I'm not gonna care. I'm gonna spend 3 seconds looking at your ad. I'm just not gonna care. It's like, what
Yeah.
makes your audience care? What makes them resonate? And there's only one thing that makes them really resonate, right? It's social proof, and the fact that I will see that, hey, like I know this person, all right? This person actually, if you think of like a leader in marketing, let's say Udi from Gong, right? Like
Yeah.
I respect Udi, great leader, and if I see like Udi saying good things about this product, I'm like it's probably legit. Now, even more important, if you compete with Gong and you see Gong using this product, you're like I want to know. So one of my key strategies has been to try and present not the customers that they may know, but the competitors that are using my product that they might have. All right. And so I use data from Owler to identify the competitors, and then I present all the competitors that match my customers because I know that's gonna the it's gonna intrigue them a lot more. All right. If I see like the logo bar of like 5 of my competitors, I'm like, cool, I gotta read everything. Like, why are they using this and not me? All right. What am I
Yeah.
missing? All right. Because that's what people are afraid about. They're afraid about missing stuff.
Right. And so some of it is also then like B2B influencer marketing. Like, so how do I get Udi or some other famous person to mention my thing?
Yep.
Do you have any take on that?
Yeah. It's I mean, relationships are like I'm not a relationship expert, right? But like relationships take time to blossom. Um, you got to find everybody's interest, right? Obviously,
Mhm.
like Gong is very successful, and so if you're a small startup has Gonga as their client, that's great. They're unlikely to see value from like them mentioning you. Like a partnership is not in their favor; it's in yours,
Yeah.
right? So you got to understand that, and what can you do for them? But I'd say um, one of the easy ways, if you're the founder, is to open your cap table to some angel investors. Take some 5, 10, 20K checks, you know, from like 20 people you really respect. You'll get the success stories, right? Because then you have an alignment of the incentives.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Yeah.
that happens
Have
very
them be
often.
literally invested in you.
Absolutely. So, but even without that, you understand like what's the alignment of incentives? Like, can they access your market? Do they need some validation on something on some category which you're really good at? Like, what do they want?
You mentioned also, when it comes to differentiation, you need to know what really resonates with the person you're trying to sell to, influence. So, what are your top ways to go about figuring that out?
So understanding who I want to influence. So understanding my persona better. It's interesting. I had a call about that yesterday with a client of mine, where they were about to embark on a journey where they were going to sign up a huge wait list into a customer discovery questionnaire. And they told me, but we don't want those as clients. And I'm like, well, that's weird. Why are you asking them all those questions? Like, oh, well, because we have them on the wait list. We might as well like ask them like what product they want. I'm like, that's weird, right? Because like even if they answer like you don't want them as clients because they're all gmail.com addresses, right? And I said, let's change what we're going to ask. Let's not ask what they want. Let's ask them first who they are, right? And who's behind that Gmail. And so again, B2B SaaS, I'm always about understanding what's the company, what's the person. Can I buy the data from my friends at Clearbit or elsewhere, or do I need to sniff for the data? Very often, if you look at sign-up forms, demo forms, or like survey forms, we're expensing too many fields. So there's a cost in conversion to every field on stuff that we could get elsewhere: job title, company name, company size. And we're not using that real estate for stuff we can't get elsewhere, which is like, hey, what's the pain? What's the real need? Right? What's your budget? What's your team size? What's the number one problem? Okay, that is what is critical: is who they really are. Can I get the data? And what is their problem? Specifically, what is their problem? I like to relate that to the gym branding, the gym experiment, right? When you pay into a gym, and I know that you do, right? You exercise a lot, right? And so when you do that, it's because you have hope of a better future of yourself. Like you have this image, like, hey, I'm going to improve. Like you want that, right? When you don't go to the gym, you don't churn immediately because you feel bad about giving up on that hope, right?
Right.
The inside of you is like, oh, right, like I'm going to be
Totally.
fat and ugly for the rest of my life now. Okay. So it's a very, very similar process that you can apply here. Ask them what is their pain, uh, and like what they want solving when they use the product. And
Mm,
if they don't activate, remind them of why they came. Use that thing, bucket it, and say, hey, you told me that you had problems with your tickets on your e-commerce store. Have you solved that problem? Like, are you now responding faster? Is your repeat rate higher? And obviously it's not. And so it's going to make
right.
them feel bad. And so they're going to come back. So use exactly the same process.
Awesome. G, thank you so much.
Thanks.